Before the video begins, we want to give a quick disclaimer. Due to the current health pandemic, me and Louis are going to do a temporary change of setup because someone thought it was a good idea to visit their parents in between all this.
Hey, don't blame me. It was bad timing. Besides, we're making it work. I actually kind of like it.
Oh, shut up. Let's just get on with this video.
Welcome to all the folks who decided to join us here on this wonderful day. I'm Louis.
And I'm Kevin.
And welcome to
Good Critic, Bad Critic.
We live in an age where superhero movies are quite abundant in today's pop culture. It seems that every year, 4 to 5 superhero movies are released that break box office records.
One may say there are too many superhero films. They are impossible to avoid, incredibly annoying, and very repetitive at times. The biggest example of this is the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Indeed, my friend. With the massive success of the MCU, other companies have started creating their own cinematic universes. The first one to try this, however, was DC's Green Lantern.
This movie was released in 2011. It was DC's first, and not last, attempt at cinematic universe. It is notorious for being an absolute piece of garbage. And to be honest, I 100% agree with that.
Hey, don't give a final verdict until we finish the review.
What are you gonna do about it, huh?
I will scold you heavily.
That's cute. Oh, and since you're not here, I'm gonna use these stacks of papers with your face on it as a replacement.
Lovely. Anywho, despite this film's less than perfect reputation, we're still going to give it a shot and see if there's anything good about it.
No, it's not. It's garbage.
After a cool-looking opening logo sequence, the film begins with a prologue explaining the origins of the Green Lantern Corps, where the defenders of the universe split into sectors. While this scene is one big exposition fest, they do show some really cool visuals along with it.
It is here that the movie also explains Parallax, the big bad guy of the movie, how he was captured by Absurd and placed in the Lost Sector. It then cuts to a space crew who crash land in the Lost Sector, conveniently fall to where Parallax is in prison and is awakened by the fear of the crew members, and absorbs their life essence, giving him enough strength to be set free.
After that nightmarish imagery, we cut to a young Hal Jordan who wakes up in the middle of the night to witness his parents arguing over his dad's upcoming flight test.
I bet you $20 that the father will die.
Deal. When Hal's father sees him running back upstairs, he goes up to comfort him, giving him a speech about overcoming fear. This is a very sweet scene that shows off the bond between Hal and his father. The next day arrives, and Hal heads to see his father's flight test. It is here that we are introduced to Carol and Hector, who become important characters later in the movie. Hal then witnesses his father's flight. However, the engine immediately malfunctions and crash lands onto the field.
Ha! You owe me 20, buddy!
Fine, I'm sending it to you now.
Oh, by the way, this introduction scene was barely interesting and it dragged for quite a long time, especially when it leads to the death of Hal's father.
Sure, it does drag, but it does establish the main character and supporting cast fairly effectively. We fast forward 18 years later, where we are now shown Absurd, the one who imprisoned Parallax, who was on his way to evacuate a civilization in danger. However, he's contacted by a colleague named Sinestro, who informs him that they were wiped out. He is then ambushed by Parallax, which leads to a tense chase that ends up severely wounding him, but managing to escape.
We then cut to Hal, now an adult, as he wakes up in a rush to head to work. He even dismisses his one-night stand. He arrives at Fair's aircraft, the place his father used to work in. Once at his locker, an adult character walks in on him. She goes on a ramble about how he's responsible with Hal brushing it off.
There, don't worry, okay? Now let's get these pants off and fly some planes.
Oh wow, that was corny.
Well, not every wisecrack can be a zinger.
Later, Hal and Carol are in a flight test against the new AI maneuver jets,
which successfully establishes Hal's cockiness as he shows off his skills as a pilot.
Yeah, but the scene has a lot of problems. It drags out longer than it needs to be, the cinematography is way too shaky, I can barely see what's going on, and they establish Hal's PTSD in an overly long series of flashbacks that pulls us out after a while. It wouldn't bother me so much if they were quicker and shorter.
You do make some valid points on this scene, but I do find it very entertaining. The shaky camera didn't particularly bother me, and instead I thought it made it more thrilling. Additionally, this helps establish Hal's weaknesses as well as demonstrate the relationship between Hal and Carol.
You're really stretching the positivity here, aren't you?
Anyway,
after that scene, Hal is called into the main office and put on suspension for his reckless stunt. But it's kinda pointless and boring, so let's just move on. Hal arrives at his nephew's birthday party. His siblings, which are 100% pointless in this movie, learn about Hal's stunt and yell at him for his immaturity.
Later, Hal visits his nephew in his room. It is in this interaction that we see a softer side of Hal as he gives advice not far off from what his dad told him. It's a much subtle way to show how much Hal's dad has rubbed off on him, and it just makes for an overall very sweet scene. And he even gives him a pretty cool birthday gift.
Kinda have a pretty good point. However, the writing in this scene makes the interaction very awkward and bland. So far, I'm really not liking the dialogue in this movie.
It's my job not to be.
Let's just say it's my job not to be.
Like that, for example?
Sure, the writing still isn't great. However, the performances given by Ryan Reynolds and even the kid add so much sincerity to the scene that it pulls it up as one of the film's greatest moments.
Well, I'm glad you found that scene charming, because literally a few seconds later, Hal has to be dragged into the plot, quite literally. Once he arrives, he witnesses Abin Sur, somehow still alive with a severe open wound for like, I don't know, more than half of the f***ing day. And I don't care if he's an alien, that is a bullshit move.
Well, it is odd that Abin Sur would survive this long. I do love that Hal's first response to seeing an alien is to try to help him when he notices his wounds. That shows a lot about Hal's character.
Hal then receives the ring by Abin Sur, who finally dies because the plot allows him to. He calls his friend, who helps very little, and only now does the military arrive when the ship crash landed hours ago. So Sinestro talks with the council on getting their strongest lanterns to fight against Parallax. We are then finally introduced to our second antagonist, Hector, who was a childhood friend of Hal and Carol. He's called in to dissect the body of Abin Sur, and here we get some of the worst editing I've ever seen in my life. We get a mini montage of Hal trying to figure out the ring and lantern, while cutting back to Hector analyzing the body. This is extremely jarring because it feels like they are cutting at random times with no consistency.
To infinity and beyond.
Okay, I did not want to mention this until later on in the film, but I just have to talk about the awful writing in this movie. All the dialogue in this tries to replicate the exact same style of writing and humor that were in the MCU films at the time. But unlike those films, it feels bland and the comedy is never funny because it relies too much on reference and crude humor. It's incredibly annoying.
Okay, maybe you make a good point, but if there's anything to take away from this, it's that it includes the birth of our hero and one of our villains. Hector gets infected by a piece of parallax in Abin Sur's body, and Hal eventually activates the lantern, which begins to take control of him in a very cool visual that leads to Hal starting the oath. However, he is interrupted by Carol, and this leads to them going to a bar where they have a conversation about how irresponsible he can be.
Dude, can we just skip this? This scene is incredibly long and very boring.
No, it develops the relationship, therefore I have to explain it.
Okay, but can you go a little bit faster?
Alright, I don't have a problem with that. After a nice dance with Carol, Hal leaves the bar and heads to his car until he is confronted by several gentlemen who were laid off because of Hal's cocky accident earlier in the film, and they want to have a chat with him. While Hal tries to defend himself, he accidentally activates his ring, which knocks out his assailants. He is taken over again by the ring and is immediately taken off-world into the Lantern's home planet, Oa. And here, Hal finally becomes the Green Lantern.
Okay, I think it's about time we talked about the awful CGI in this movie. Throughout this entire film, the CGI has been awful. From Parallax's escape scene, the council, and even the f***ing dogfight scene. But the cherry on top is the terrible Green Lantern suit. This movie was released in 2011. Movies at this time and before it had better special effects.
Well, here's the thing.
Oh, don't you dare defend the effects, I swear!
No. I agree that the effects are very rough, on the suit especially. But one thing that people don't really seem to take into account It's the actual design of the suit itself. When you take a look at how they came up with the look of the suit, it's pretty impressive. Let's be honest. It would have been very difficult to do a direct translation from comics and make audience take it seriously in live action. The movie successfully manages to give the outfit a more alien aesthetic while still being faithful to the design from comics. I even appreciate small details like how whenever he uses his powers, you can see the energy coming off his suit. That just looks cool.
You're right, the designs are quite good, but it would have worked so much better if it was a real suit. Because this is unnatural, unconvincing, and overall pain to watch. Just look at the CGI mask. It reaches a whole new level of uncanny valley. My eyes are hurting from looking at this.
The uncanny mask is very distracting, but I wouldn't say that it ruins the whole suit. In fact, if you remove the mask entirely, the suit itself doesn't look bad at all. And honestly, it looks kind of cool.
Oh, f*** you!
Love you too. After Hal gets his costume, he meets with another Green Lantern named Tomar Red, who is one of the more interesting characters in the film. He explains to Hal the functions of the ring and later goes on a tour with him throughout Oa, all the while explaining the history of the planet. And I gotta say, similar to the suit, I really like how they designed Oa. It's a bit desaturated for my liking, but the actual setting is very unique and well represented from comics. Tomar leads Hal to the main Lantern Corps, where Sinestro has gathered all the other lanterns to join together in a fight against Parallax, in which they all agree to help. Afterwards, Tomar begins training Hal on how to use the ring. Hal starts getting the hang of it until he's interrupted by another Lantern named Kilowog, who is the funniest character in the movie. He tries to show how to use the ring in combat in a pretty funny scene. Sinestro drops by to check on Hal to see if he's worthy of the ring. To be honest, Sinestro is the best character in this whole film. He truly is a standout. Not only is his makeup incredible and spot on to the comics, but Mark Strong gives a fantastic performance that gives every line of dialogue a sense of weight and impact. He also serves as a good counterpoint to Hal, as he is fearless while Hal is not. After being scolded by Sinestro, Hal returns back to Earth doubting his own abilities. All the while, Hector is teaching his class, but begins getting some headaches as his connection with Parallax grows, and he shows off a bit of his power. He gets a call to meet with his dad, and in this scene, we really get an idea of Hector's daddy issues. The scene itself isn't very special, but Peter Skarsgård's performance really elevates it. And that's one props I can give this movie. All of the performances are really good. The actors always give it their all, and it doesn't feel like they are phoning it in. Even the younger actors do a solid job. Sinestro leads a group of lanterns in a confrontation with Parallax. However, Parallax defeats them easily, forcing Sinestro to retreat back to the council. He attempts to convince them of a different solution that would involve making a ring of fear. This later leads to our villain's backstory, where it's explained that he was once a member of the council who wanted to control the power of fear, but it corrupted him into the monster he is now.
Wow, this is the backstory? That is very underwhelming considering the amount of build-up they've been giving him.
After that, we cut to a party being held at Ferris Aircraft, where Hal, Carol, and Hector are present.
Dude, this is getting really boring. Can we just skip some of these scenes? They're really not that important.
Kevin, we can't just skip these scenes. They may contain important moments that can help drive the character arcs.
Listen, Lewis. At this point, I really do not care for these characters, their interactions, or the overall story. Hal is not an interesting character. In fact, I kinda hate him. All the characters are underdeveloped and poorly written, which just adds to the terrible writing that this film has. The writing is either comedy that falls flat, dialogue that makes every character interaction, including the romance, feel artificial, hard to watch, and very forgettable, or an overabundance of exposition rather than showing us how this world works. And finally, both villains don't pose a real threat, have barely done anything in this film, and are very uninteresting to follow.
But that doesn't give us the right to just skip over scenes that could address or even fix your issues.
Dude, we are at page 17 in the script!
Okay, we can skip a few scenes. Lightning round!
During this party, Hector tries to kill his father because daddy issues, and we finally see Green Lantern's first public appearance, as he saves the helicopter with a Hot Wheels reference. Afterwards, Hector transforms into a horrific blowout of the design that I hate looking at. His creatures grab the attention of Parallax, who now decides to go to Earth. Later, Hal's best friend demands answers for what happened last night, which Hal, without hesitation, does so. We then get a very awkward and overly long romantic scene between Hal and Carol.
Hector is then picked up by an underused Amanda Waller, who takes him to the facility where his dad wants to cure him of his condition. Hector politely rejects, and Hal comes in to try and stop him, but fails, leading to Hector's father being killed.
The only important thing to take away from this scene is that the whole parallel editing between these two comes full circle.
How did we end up so different?
Yeah, that's about it. Pretty unsatisfying. Let's move on.
Okay then.
We then see Hal doubting himself until Carol tells him otherwise, and that's her only contribution to this film. Then Sinestro obtains the yellow ring, and then Hal intervenes. He offers himself to fight Parallax head-on to prove that he's not a little bitch.
Are you done?
Yeah.
Are you happy?
Yeah. Yeah, I am.
Good. Now let's proceed with the film. Hal heads back to Earth where he has his final confrontation with Hector, who has kidnapped Carol off screen. Despite the damsel in distress thing, the scene itself is actually pretty good. The back and forth between Hal and Hector are some of the more well-written lines in the movie, and it makes the whole scene very suspenseful. Hal pulls such a clever move by giving him the ring, which ultimately backfires on him because he wasn't chosen. After Hal defeats Hector, Parallax comes and quickly dispatches him for his failure. Hal attempts to get his ring back, but Parallax catches him and begins to suck his life force. Luckily, Carol comes into the rescue by activating one of the jet's rockets, which hits Parallax. He runs off, Hal puts his ring back on, and goes off to face him. Parallax goes on a rampage throughout the city. Hal arrives and he uses his ring to fight him for a while before leading him out into space. They have a close chase throughout some asteroids until they reach the sun. Kevin, I have been talking for a while. Have anything to say?
No, not really. Like I said, I really don't care what happens in this film at this point. If you want any input, this fight scene looks like it was ripped straight from a PlayStation 3 game.
Well, at least it's better than the actual PS3 game based on the movie.
Wait, there's a game based on this movie?
Oh yeah, look it up. Green Lantern Rise of the Manhunters.
Oh!
Hal leads Parallax into the sun, and as Parallax is being pulled into his gravity, Hal finishes him up with an epic punch. Hal then faints and drifts into the sun. Thankfully, he is saved by his fellow Green Lanterns, who congratulate Hal for his heroic deeds. Hal returns to Earth, where he and Carol become a couple, and Hal accepts his new role as a Green Lantern, concluding the movie.
Oh yeah, and there's also a post-credit scene where Sinestro becomes a Yellow Lantern, implying a sequel that will never happen.
That was Green Lantern. And was it really as bad as people said it was?
Yes. Yes, it was! The CGI is the least of this film's problems. The characters are uninteresting, underdeveloped, and at points very annoying. The editing is jarring, poorly assembled, and an eyesore. The story is generic at best, and the writing is a mess because of the unfunny jokes, awkward dialogue, and poorly structured narrative, leading into a climax that I could care less about. I honestly gave up on this movie halfway. It's a 3 out of 10 for me.
Well, this film isn't great. But it isn't without some great moments. The actors give a consistently amazing performance that helps to elevate the less than stellar writing. There are a few scenes where the quality of the dialogue really shines, as well as gives some funny moments. Whenever there's action, it can be pretty fun to watch. Sinestro is awesome and is a highlight in any scene he's in, and while the effects aren't great, the design of the costume and the world are really good. Overall, a 5 out of 10.
Of course the DC fangirls lied on this film.
So that will conclude our review of Green Lantern. If you share any different thoughts on the film, please leave them in the comments below. If you liked the video, maybe give us a thumbs up.
And if you guys really didn't like it, there's always the thumbs down option.
If you want to be notified of future videos, please click the subscribe button and press the bell icon. Aside from that, I just hope you all have a wonderful
or terrible rest of your day. So, wanna play some video games?
Yeah, I've actually been struggling this one level. You think it can help?
Alright, buddy. Let me just break this down so I can get on.
Yeah!
3, 2, 1, go!
Falcon!